So welcome back, everyone. In the next two segments, in this segment and next segment, we'll be going kind of a little deeper into the mythology of Shiva, at least as we find it in the Puranas that are dedicated to Shiva. In this clip, we'll look at the myth of Shiva in the forest of the pines. And then in the next clip, we'll be looking at the birth of his son, Ganesha. Now, both of these are told in the text called the Shiva Purana, which was compiled sometime between this time span of 300 to 1000 CE. So it's like a huge swath of time. But actually, the stories themselves are a bit older, probably, maybe from the time of around the 1st century CE. The translations we're going to be reading through are by scholars named Cornelia Dimmitt and J.A.B. Van Buitenen. It was published in 1978, a really long time ago. They get kind of long-winded in parts, so what I'll be doing here is to kind of just focus on a few key breakout moments in the stories that reveal Shiva's personality and kind of special powers. Another note, the Puranas use a lot of different names for Shiva and the other gods and the heroes and so on, and our translators have left them all kind of untranslated. They're all different. As I'm reading the stories, I'm just going to use the name Shiva or Parvati or Ganesha and so on, instead of confusing you with all these different names. So here we go with the first of our two myths, the story of Shiva's encounter with the Brahmin sages in the forest of the pines. So there were once a bunch of Brahmin devotees to Shiva who were living in the pine forest with their wives, and every day they would perform rituals in worship of Shiva. To test their devotion one day, Shiva once came there naked and in a disfigured form while the sages were out gathering firewood. And then he started dancing lewdly in front of the wives of the sages. The wives actually started getting turned on by what Shiva was doing, and in many pictorial versions, the wives also start getting naked. Just then, the sages come back. They see what's going on, they get angry, and they curse Shiva that his penis should fall off. And that's what happens. His linga, in this case his actual literal penis, drops off, and it turns into a blazing fireball, and it goes into the ground. It burns everything it touches. It goes through the underworlds, through all the hells. Then it flies through the heavens and earth as well. Now, as you might expect, everyone starts kind of freaking out about this flying penis through the air. Gods, sages, humans, everybody's scared, right? They appeal to Lord Brahma, the grandfather, that, hey, we should do something about it. So he goes to the Brahmins in the forest. Brahma scolds them for treating Shiva so bad, right? He urges them to pacify this linga. In order to do that, they have to first convince the goddess Parvati to function as a yoni, as a receptacle and a base for that linga. After installing this burning linga on it, they have to pacify the linga by doing a cooling puja ritual, bathing it with milk and other cooling fluids. So, pretty fascinating story, isn't it? Let's see how it plays out actually in the text. So, there's a beautiful pine forest where certain virtuous sages, always loyal to Shiva, used to occupy themselves continually with meditation upon him. Those lords of seers performed worship to Shiva 3 times a day and praised him continuously with all kinds of divine hymns. Once upon a time, all those chief Brahmins, devotees of Shiva, intent upon meditation on Shiva, went to the forest to gather some fuel. Meanwhile, Shankara, Shiva, adopted a misshapen body in order to test them, and appeared there colored blue and red. Utterly resplendent in appearance, he was naked and decked out in ornamental ashes. Holding his penis in his hand, he made lewd gestures. Thus Shiva himself went to the forest in an affectionate mood, thinking to do favor to his devotees who lived there, and with whom he was well pleased. When they saw him, some of the wives of the sages were terrified, but others were amazed and excited, sought to approach him. While some of the women embraced him and others grasped his hand, they lost themselves in rivalry with one another. Just at this moment, the eminent seers returned. When they beheld this revolting person, they were upset and overcome with anger. Much aggrieved, all the sages, fooled by Shiva's trick, cried out, "Who is this? Who is this?" Now the action's going to get going. When that pure naked man said nothing at all, the noble seer spoke to that terrible apparition. "Your behavior is disgusting. You are ruining the way of the Veda. Therefore that penis of yours shall fall to the ground." When they said this, the linga of the pure Shiva's supernatural body fell off at once. Blazing like fire, that penis or linga burned up everything in its way. Wherever it went, it burned things down. Shiva's fiery linga went to the netherworld and to heaven. It traveled throughout the world, but nowhere did it come to rest. The worlds grew troubled and the sages unhappy. No one could find shelter, neither gods nor seers. Now, I should say that this is actually a very common theme in Hindu mythology, by the way. Something happens, the gods, the seers, the people, all are troubled, they're panicking, and so Grandfather Brahma has to kind of solve the mess. Usually he scolds the people involved, like, "What's wrong with you?" Anyway, here's what he says in this story, and it's clearly a breakout moment where the message isn't really to the Brahmins in the story, but to Brahmin devotees in real life in early India when this Purana was being composed. "Hey Brahmins, you are wise, but you've done a contemptible thing. You who are so critical when the ignorant act in this way. Who can hope for his own well-being after obstructing the god Shiva? One who does not welcome a guest in the middle of the day has his good karma taken away, and after leaving to that man his own evil karma, the guest departs. How much worse, then, is it to deny hospitality to Shiva?" Let's actually take this speech apart for a second, because Brahma is articulating a key feature that's a distinct feature of early Shiva religious thought. The idea is that if you don't treat a Shiva renunciant, a guest in your home, nicely, then you're going to lose your good karma. And the renunciant, the guest, leaves you his bad karma. It turns out that this idea here was a tradition of early Shiva renunciants who were called the Pashupatas, who actually did seem to do these kinds of things. They actually imitated the scene in real life. They would go naked in public. They would kind of perform lewd acts on themselves to earn the kind of ire of mainstream conservative Brahmins in an attempt to push their bad karma onto the people that got offended. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but for now, let's get back to the story. I just wanted to point that out to you. The Brahmins now ask Brahma what they can do to pacify Shiva's burning penis, and here's what he says. "Go and worship the mountain-born goddess Parvati. You must placate Shiva. When she assumes the form of a vulva, the penis will become calm. Listen to the rule that I tell you now. If you treat her with affection, she will become agreeable. Put a jar filled with water from a sacred ford, durwa grass, and barley in the center of a splendid 8-petaled diagram. Cast a spell on the jar with Vedic mantras, doing worship according to the rules of Shruti, and while recollecting Shiva. Anoint the linga with water, O supreme seers, with that water. When it's consecrated with the Shatarudriya mantras, it'll come at last to rest. After putting in place Parvati in the form of a yoni, place the blessed shaft on top of it, and once more cast a spell on it. Propitiate the Supreme Lord with perfumes, sandalwood, flowers, and incense, and with the puja of food and other goods. Placate him with prostrations, hymns, holy songs, and instruments. Then perform the Swasthayana ceremony for Godspeed and cry out, 'Victory! Be gracious, Lord of gods, who brings happiness to the world. You are the creator, protector, and destroyer, who is beyond Om. You are the beginning of the world, the womb of the world, the interior of the world. Be at peace, great Lord. Protect all the worlds.' If you follow this procedure, without a doubt, well-being will return to the world. The three worlds will not decay, and felicity will prevail. After gratifying Parvati and also Shiva by the preceding order, the supreme linga will be brought to rest. So the sages do all of this. They pacify the penis, and the prosperity returns to the world, and so ends the story. It's fascinating, isn't it? And maybe instructive about the double meaning here that the linga is supposed to have. Now, because when the Brahmins saw Shiva shaking his penis, they saw it as just a penis. Much like many of us, maybe, who aren't devotees, if you look at the stone linga and you see a penis. But then, once the Brahmins cursed it to fall off, it turned into something else, right? Turned into that terrifying and unstoppable power that Shiva has, this sheer force in transcendent form that's beyond even Om. It's higher than everything. And then once the Brahmins reinstalled it and now properly worshipped it, not as a penis, but as this symbol, an abstract symbol of Shiva and his power, now it brings happiness to all the three worlds. So there you go. That's how the Shiva Linga came into being, and that's why it gets worshipped, at least according to mythology. So let's take a break here, and then we'll come back and look at another Shiva myth, the birth of his son, Ganesha.